Fellow rebels, here in the dungeon with me today is a member of the new rebellion. She's approximately 26 feet in length and nearly 8 feet tall. She's black as night and has a significantly higher fire blast count than most dragons. People of the grounded dungeon, I give you Fury.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining me in my cell. So, the one thing I wanted to address at the start of this interview is that you're one of our first BotGD 2 roleplay partners. And I remember just a little bit ago you mentioned that you lurked throughout Season 1. So what were some of the things that you saw in this roleplay before ultimately making, and what led you to make the ultimate decision of joining for the sequel?
Well, I wasn't actually on Tumblr officially when BotGD 1 started and went on. I caught most of the aftermath, the end of it. I lurked on King Haddock's Tumblr blog for a long time, and I saw some mention of this and that here and there. I ended up looking around and reading some of the old threads, and it was really interesting. I liked it.
Oh boy, that's kind of like a dream come true and an idea of a worst nightmare for me, is people going back and rereading some of my old threads. But to hear that you were ultimately interested and thought it was cool is a good sign. What plot arc do you remember catching? Like, what was the one that was like, oh, okay, this one's caught my eye?
Well, the part where Stonejit, that guy, probably went completely nuts.
Oh, okay, so you saw the
right off.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Right off the deep end. There he goes. Goodbye.
So, you caught that one, and that was the one that Tree decided to do for the video. That particular season seemed to cause a lot of attention, which is interesting. I'll have to think about that, get some more people's insight on it. But that's cool. So it's neat that we got you to join us, and it's awesome because there were a lot of people in the early part of Battle of the Grounded Dungeon that didn't, they would miss half a season or a season, and they felt so out of the loop they didn't bother trying to join. But then it was always a really great thing when people joined anyway, like Tez joined us in Season 2, and then you're here joining us after 5 seasons of the roleplay, and you still fit right in. So what's it like for you knowing that there was this entire history of this story that you're just joining now?
Well, I do feel like I was just airdropped into a game that was already going on.
You were.
Everyone's already knows everyone. There's a bunch of things that already happened that I probably don't know about. There's a bunch of lore I have to ask about. And I played it safe. I chose a dragon I knew everyone knew existed. And just put myself sort of into the character. So I definitely was tiptoeing at first. I've gotten a little bolder now with a new character and new stuff going on.
Yes. Yes, I saw how you eased from starting out with having Fury in the background to drawing some traction with her plot, and then figuring out introducing a really colorful character that is the Phantom, which we're going to ask some questions about him in a bit.
Sweet.
So,
can't reveal too much now.
Right, now that's the other part of this interview, because it's BotGD is still very young. So I'm not sure how much material we're going to be able to cover without me trying to find out something I'm not supposed to know. But
I'll be careful.
Yeah, I'll endeavor to try to anyway. So, I guess a good start is a lot of people either created a self-insert of themselves, or someone, how do I put this? Or they created a character that had a unique character trait that even though they didn't share it, they were curious curious to explore it. So how does Fury and the Phantom fall in line with you? Into either one of those categories, or into something that I'm not taking into account?
Well, Fury literally started as me, so there you go. But I did definitely... Well, I started out with just her as me, but I changed her a lot and gave her a tragic backstory, as you do. And,
of course.
No, she's definitely not exactly me.
So she started out at the same origin, but then developed as she came along. What were some of the things that would you say is the biggest differences between you and Fury?
Well, I wouldn't... Well, I don't hate humans, for one thing.
That's a good start. Makes things less awkward for me.
Really like humans. At the start, she didn't really like humans at all, and would have never made friends with one, ever. But, of course, Ferris came along, and now they're kind of friends, and she trusts him, and that's kind of nice.
Which I did not see coming. I was surprised that Ferris got out of... Did I just mess up something real bad? Hold on, technical difficulties. Alright, what I was going to say before I had to scramble with my setup to make sure I hadn't destroyed the entire recording, was that was very surprising, the connection between the two, because it went from me not being sure if Ferris was even going to get out of his front door before dying, to a scene potentially happening where Ferris tries to eat Fury, to Ferris being back in his own mind and going on an adventure with her.
Yeah. Like, I didn't know anything about Ferris until he walked right up to her and said, "Hi, can I help?"
Yeah, and then you had met his father a little bit before that, which was the only other character you had some interactions with prior to going on the mission to save her brother.
Spider-Man.
Yes, Spider-Man. Thank you for the artwork, by the way, of Malek. It's the only one to date, and it's very nice.
Thank you. Those legs were impossible to draw.
Yeah, he's the way that he moves is not necessarily the way I always take the time to describe how he moves, because most of the time he's balanced on his legs, doesn't use his human legs nearly as often, and kind of can suspend his body in different angles in the air because he's being supported on multiple different sides by his spider legs. So he really does fill up a room, in a sense. Like, he'll take up an entire corner, or kind of, like, if he walks over something, like, half of his legs have to, like, step over it while the rest of him just continues on straight. Yeah, lots of little details that I'm not doing on the spot role-playing. But it has made thinking how he moves around interesting. But there hasn't been...
He gives me a similar vibe as that lady from Paper Mario that turns into a spider.
Now I have to look up Paper Mario.
Her name is Mimi.
Mimi from Paper Mario. Yes, I was thinking Doc Ock, but even Doc Ock only has 4 legs, and retrospectively I might go for that if things get too messy with him having 8. But for now.
Fair enough.
So, Fury started as a self-insert, but usually at some point in time the characters kind of choose to take on a life of their own. Does Fury have any of those moments?
I mean, I haven't done a lot of threading, obviously. I've been in the background a lot. And you're like the only character only other person I've role-played with. But I just say she's different from me now. She's not just me.
Something's growing.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's a little weird because you guys you call me Fury with an I, when I'm technically just the one with the Y.
Yes, that's real nice in the chat. It's like, I think there's already been more than once where on a thread I've either put a Y where I wasn't supposed to, or in the chat I've put an I where I wasn't supposed to. Actually, let me see what I did with my script here. Ah, I used a Y. I got it right.
Okay. Nice.
So, still early on, still humble beginnings. Something that's I could almost guarantee that it's going to grow into its own unique life. Your character and your entire Battle of the Grounded Dungeon experience. Everyone seems to find their niche because there's always the ability for people to explore the plot line that they're hoping to. Sometimes it doesn't work with certain characters, depending on what they got going on. But by and large, there's always going to be someone around to go on an adventure with.
Yeah.
So, how did oh, go ahead.
Right now everyone's kind of busy.
Yeah, the raid. I guess this right now is also a section of history. Early BotGD 2, everyone's off trying to take a central prison, and a bunch of crap is going down on the island while they're gone. Ties up a lot of hands, but that's okay, because things always even out later.
Yeah. Plus, I didn't know how I would possibly fit into the raid, so I just decided to ignore that.
And big threads scare me, so we got into the same boat.
It's just nah. You guys enjoy that. I'll stay over here.
Which is interesting, because if there's anything further raid related, nothing goes better with a central raid. Sorry, a raid against central than an angry Night Fury diving out of the sky.
Ooh, that would be cool. I guess Gray's Night Fury would have some company.
Yeah, there you go. The kind of like the golden rule of thumb is that if you have a threat idea, ask, and if someone asks you, say yes, try it out. The only exception would be is if there's like story elements that absolutely lock a character down, like a good example. My character Stonegit, his bread and butter is guarding the king, and that's all he's going to be doing. If he's lucky, he gets a vacation to say hello to someone. So him going out on a raid would be something that I'd have to say, nope, definitely can't do it, because that's like the main thing. Whereas someone like Ferris his main thing is going out to find his new destiny, and there would be nothing to stop him from chilling out with Fury and finding some of her destiny as well, which is why it worked out so good.
Yeah.
So, oh, go ahead.
Found a brother, so.
Yes. Now, is Tolly the correct way to pronounce that?
No, it's actually Tail.
Tail.
It's
okay.
Tail, but misspelled.
So you bamboozled us twice.
I'm funny.
It works. So I guess question one is, why would you torment people that way with how you spell your names? You don't have to answer that. Question two is, how come, like a dragon? Like you chose to play and have your main muses be dragons, as opposed to a human or half-breed. So what inspired that?
I love dragons.
That's a good reason.
It's really the only reason I mean.
It's like solid.
I roleplayed as humans and other things before and other roleplays. I just wanted to be a dragon this time.
Nice.
But it's not just dragons, I've got more characters now.
Right, now we have the Phantom, but I'm not really sure what he is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Guess there's only so many questions I can ask about that. But you've actually roleplayed before. Yes, you have roleplay experience, which is something that a lot of people didn't have before coming into this.
Yeah, I've been a part of a few different roleplays, mostly on a website called Scratch.
Okay.
So people would invite me to those, and I'd just hang out, and those were always fun.
Nice.
I enjoyed them.
Is Battle of the Grounded Dungeon coming up to snuff, or comparing it all to other roleplays that you've been in?
It's great. even if I haven't been super active in BotGD, I still really enjoy it.
Sweet.
And I'm always up for more roleplay.
That's awesome. Because you've truly found us at a moment where we're seasoned now. I can only imagine what you would have thought if you saw early season 1. And, yeah, it was a mess.
I'm not entirely sure how much experience I had around if I would have started in the beginning of the first season.
Oh, how many years have you been role-playing?
I don't know the exact number, but I'd say about 3.
Okay.
Maybe longer. At least 3.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So back then, I guess we all would have been fresh. So a lot of plots tend to have a direction, and at first, I got to say, like I like the layers that you've added to your character plot already. Because I thought the first direction would be, let's find Tail. This is, straightforward. Let's find her brother. But almost immediately, I noticed that the plot had gotten infinitely thicker the moment that other Night Furies and the Phantom showed up.
Oh yeah.
So I know I can't ask too many questions.
You can ask. I just might not answer.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I guess my first one is everyone has a theme that they like to explore. One of the best examples is the role player Kiri, who played the Viking ninja in Battle of the Grounded Dungeon 1. Her niche was a tragedy. And she crafted a story revolving around that theme very, very well. What sort of theme do you have in your mind with this story of the Night Fury siblings and this Phantom?
Well, the Phantom's just mystery right now.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got his own story, and I'll explore that later when I guess after this raid thing and there's more people available and I can roleplay more.
Right. So right now it's in the
for the siblings, they're just they love each other and they missed each other. And Fury was just looking for a missing part of herself, mostly. She felt broken without him.
So a combination of a story of family connection matched with a mystery that we don't know what direction it's going to go in yet.
Yeah, you don't know yet.
And that, coming from someone who has roleplayed with devious people before, concerns me terribly. Because that can take a pretty sharp left or right turn as to what kind of mystery we're talking about. Because it could easily go from, this mystery's fun like Scooby-Doo, and then there's other mysteries like, nope, this is more like Jack the Ripper, and I am not having fun.
Well, I'll say this, his backstory isn't fun.
Oh, good.
Crazy.
We already have an excellent start. I feel so secure in the safety of our characters.
I mean, we're talking a character who's half mind-controlling, half friends with a bunch of Night Furies, so there's gotta be something going on there. Yeah,
I will admit, that is... You already did take me by surprise with the Phantom's methods. Like, it's definitely not... Even though he's doing the same kind of thing Drago is doing in How to Train Your Dragon 2, it definitely lacks the malicious air that he possessed.
Yeah.
Makes me think.
Going from, like, what I've already put in the thread, he's not trying to hurt the dragons. He really does care about them.
Well, I'm glad that he backed off and didn't have an opportunity to kill Ferris in the moment where they were running through the woods.
I wouldn't have killed him.
Well, yeah, you.
I'm sure you like your character.
Well, you usually, if you ever want to kill someone, you just ask permission. That would have been one of the instances where I probably would have said no, even though Ferris was up on the chopping block earlier. But still, you owe him big time. That boy hasn't gone for a jog in like a decade, and you made him run until he was beyond winded.
Yeah.
He
deserves a long break.
Yeah, he's gonna be huffing and puffing for a while now. But it's interesting because it's like, it's good that the Phantom backed off and kind of snapped out of his momentary, crazed moment of sword swinging, because if that didn't work, Ferris's next attempt at saving his life would have been bluffing by threatening to hurt one of the dragons. Because that would have been one of his.
Been interesting.
Right, it would have been his only conclusion of I gotta back away with a dragon with a dagger up against it, because otherwise he's gonna have me get fire blasted here, and I just want to go home.
That would have been interesting to explore. I guess we could explore that some other time.
That may come up. He is surrounded by Furies after all. So I'm going through the questions here. I probably already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask for posterity's sake. Who got you into the RP? Like, who was the person who was like, hey, if you want to do this, here's what you can come and do, and, join us, have a good time.
Yeah, I would lean towards Haddock, because Haddock gets me into everything. All sorts of trouble. And maybe also Tree to an extent, because I follow her and she follows me, and we sort of know each other. So those two kind of got me in, and then one thing led to another, and we're all like, hey, let's just make a sequel, let's do it.
Nice. So you were around for the creation of the BotGD sequel. I actually don't know the intricate details of this, so what's that story?
Honestly, I don't exactly remember all of it. I just, suddenly, there was a new server, and the people were starting to get back together and inviting each other, and then I was just like, well, what if you did a sequel? And someone else was like, yeah, what if we did a sequel?
What a great question!
Hypothetical. People were talking, and, well, why don't we? Somebody said, why don't we do it? And suddenly, there it was. Everyone was making new characters, and Tabby was there for a little while, and Fish was lurking in the background with his grandma character.
We still need that grandma to come back at some point, but there's time.
Yeah.
Well, fascinating, because, speaking of mysteries, I know that Greg started the chat, and...
Yeah, he did.
I know that King invited me back to the group while we were just chatting on a different server. We were getting into the origin story of Battle of the Grounded Dungeon 2, and I kind of just wanted to hear, what's the story with that, because we kind of discovered before we had to, edit out a really big day-long pause of the podcast. We were just about to kind of get into that. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, I actually went back to the chat to see what happened, and from what I can tell, Greg invited me into the server. He just started it and then started inviting everyone. We all filed in one by one.
Well, it was an invitation we were ready to accept as quickly as possible. But, yeah. So I always thought that the intention was to do role-playing, but it sounds like the first motive of just getting everyone together was just so that we could talk.
We could talk about it and figure out what we wanted to do, if anything.
So it was always on the table that we might have been doing a Battle of the Grounded Dungeon sequel?
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
I was just talking with Greg about it. He's like, it would be cool, man. I'd be down.
Right, because you had been able to read what had gone on in Battle of the Grounded Dungeon 2, so now you had the frame of reference and the interest to join Battle of the Ground. Sorry, you had seen what had happened in Battle of the Grounded Dungeon 1, so you had the frame of reference and interest for Battle of the Grounded Dungeon 2. And I, on my side, was just a sucker who could never get enough of the story in general, so it worked out pretty well for me, too.
Yeah. Some are just lurking, but that's fine. It's not an issue.
Well, I mean, you always need... Sometimes the lurkers are the ones who come up with the best plot, because they've been observing most of the story, and oftentimes it gives people time to think of something really unique to do.
Yeah.
So I guess as a wrap-up, I'm kind of wondering what your aspirations are now with the story. Tale and Fury are becoming a little more solidified. There's definitely a lot of intrigue with the Phantom. So without getting into plot-specific points, what are you hoping to get out of this story?
Well, I do want to do something big for it. I do want to make a big impact eventually. So that's kind of what my end goal is.
What sort of impact did you have in mind?
I'm not entirely sure what specifically, but I want to be remembered for something good.
Well, something good is already something good is already something that a lot of people don't get remembered for. Some people are remembered for doing terrible and horrible things. I can't really name anyone. Oh wait, well, I mean, there are some names. I mean, Hemlock was brilliant. The season 2 villain, she was fantastic, and we know Aki's 5 feet of evil. And that tree stabs as many feels as she does hearts. So those are. I think outside of that, that's pretty much it. Give and take. But so it is an important distinction that you're interested in being remembered for something good. But I'm not sure if I believe you entirely, just because of the element of uncertainty that the Phantom brings.
Yeah, fair. I do something crazy. A little crazy.
Crazy is fun to write. So even though this is a bit short, coming back, those were the last 2 main questions. So is there anything that you were wondering about Battle of the Grounded Dungeon? Any questions for me? Or just anything that you kind of want to talk about or touch on in general before we call this a wrap?
I didn't think of anything, and I can never think of anything.
Hey, well, you know what? That's okay. It's not like any of this is set in stone. I'm more than happy to talk to people more than once about this stuff, especially if they think of something new or just anything that they feel like ranting about on the show. It's starting out as casual interviews, but it'll probably mutate into a place where people can just rant about all of their creative writing, the characters, and the past, and just have a good time with that as well.
Yeah.
All right.
I do want to thank everyone for being supportive and inviting me in and letting me roleplay with you all.
Absolutely. This was always a place where the more, the merrier, and if there's ever uncertainty about how things are taking off with your plot, the best formula, as I said before, is just ask to thread with someone. Their answer, barred unusual circumstances, will be yes, and you'll be able to build your story up from there. And we're always happy to have you, and always happy to have anyone else who wants to come and join us. The dungeon has plenty of room.
Yay!
All right.
I can't wait.
Good. Well, as a formal disclaimer, just at the tail end of this, I do apologize for the feedback that all the listeners are going to hear on this recording. We don't know why it's happening, but it's okay that it is, because the title says that this whole podcast is freelance, and if how I've edited these videos is any implication, I don't have the time or the motivation to make it any better than this. But that said, I'm happy with how this is. I hope you guys are too. So Fury, thank you for joining me. Tree was here last, so my cell door is probably locked, but see if you can sneak out before she catches you.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
So long, Fury.